Welcome. Welcome to the YSSP alumni, both from afar and from the staff. And I'm Joanne Beyer. For those of you who were in the YSSP in the last 25 years, and maybe remember when I gave in the closing ceremony, when I gave my little talk, I've said every year I said, I'm not saying goodbye, I'm saying welcome to the IIASA family. And now I just want to say, I'm not just welcoming you alumni, I'm welcoming you home. Also a very warm welcome to any YSSPers, and the same message to them who are streaming. Welcome to supervisors, staff, and the YSSP team. And I want to say that this welcome is definitely not just from me. There's many more people who have worked really hard to put this event together. And let me mention first and foremost, Maggie Collins. Maggie, why don't you stand up? Who's really put this event together with heart and soul, and we thank her. Brian Fath, who was also a very big help. I should mention Monica Bauer, who dug up at least 1,000 emails. So if you've heard from email, you'll know it's because of Monica. And of course, we also, Tanya Huber, I don't know if she's here, and Alex Kofala have worked very hard. So welcome from the whole YSSP team to you. I have the great pleasure to introduce the first two speakers, but before I do that, I want to just draw your attention to the agenda, where it's really terrific that we've got so many speakers from the past with 4 panels. We have a great evening program where there's going to be a lot of fun, and also council members will be joining us, and also a vernissage on Wednesday evening, plus some really nice discussion groups tomorrow. So, so it's going to be a great 2 days. So let me turn now to introducing very, very briefly, because I think they're going to say more about also themselves and how they were a part of the YSSP. And I want to first introduce Roger Levy, and actually, this is just a huge pleasure for me because, the YSSP has just kind of been my lifeblood for like 25 years, and I owe that all to Roger, who set it up way back in 1977. I mean, that was one of the earliest things that he did when he took over the directorship in 1975. So, Roger, we owe all of this to Roger, and I won't say about many, many other things that I'm sure Roger's going to tell you about those early years. So after Roger, of course, then we will have Nebojša Nakicinovic, who, of course, is Naki to all of us, and he's now our deputy DG and CEO, and was also, like me, around in those very early years, knew the very first class of YSSPers because he was a staff member, as was I. And I think also has part of his heart in this program over all these many, many years, and will be telling you a little bit, connecting you a little bit to his history when he gives his talk. Yeah, so without, I think, any more to do, I'll turn this over to Roger.
Thank you, Joanne. I don't think there's anyone happier to be here than me. I look out at your faces, and I look through that camera at all the people streaming this greeting and feel very proud. But I really have to tell you that you owe your presence here to the flutter of a butterfly wing in Pennsylvania in 1956. Now, most of you I know about the butterfly effect, named so by Professor Lorentz, a mathematician and meteorologist, who pointed out that in complex, dynamic, nonlinear systems, even the flutter of a butterfly wing in Pennsylvania can cause a tornado to occur in Australia, just because dynamic systems are very sensitive to the initial conditions, and a small change can lead to big differences. So the butterfly effect affects you because in June of 1956, I got the opportunity to spend the summer in Santa Monica at the Rand Corporation. I had just finished college, and I was heading for MIT for a master's degree in management. I went to Rand. Again, many of you may not know it, but it is the place where systems analysis was born. And in 1956, it was still a babe, but it had some triumphs. I spent that summer immersed in systems analysis, learning about it in ways that were only possible through deep immersion. And I left no longer dedicated to getting a master's degree in management, but rather saying, I need a PhD to be able to come back here and work. So I went, changed my program, got a doctorate in computer science, went back to Rand, worked there for 14 years. In 1967, we were approached at Rand by someone who was thinking about this strange international institute that was going to build bridges between East and West. What does Rand think such an institute should be like? I ended up writing the summary paper of the thoughts at Rand. I then spent the next 5 years shadowing the negotiations with Howard Rafa that eventually led in 1972 to the creation of the Institute. Howard invited me to come back in 1974 for a year, and it turned out I stayed for 6 more years as director. Almost as soon as I was director, I thought back to my Rand experience, and I said, you know, that summer was life-changing for me. My career changed entirely. What a marvelous opportunity it would be to bring scientists not only from single disciplines to see an interdisciplinary environment, but scientists from around the world to see an international environment at a formative stage in their careers, at a time when what they learn can affect the entire course of their activities. So we decided to start a program. I turned to the head of personnel. At that time was a Soviet citizen, man named Gennady Potomkin. And I said, Gennady, would you help us draw up a plan for this program? We had thought it through and had some ideas, but I wanted him to put it on paper. And oh, by the way, let's have a name for it. So Gennady came back a week later with a document, and the content was pretty good. He'd captured very well our ideas. But I looked at the title that he had chosen, and I said, we have a problem. A problem? Herr Director, what is the problem? Well, Summer Program for Young Scientists has a certain acronym. If you take the initial letters, S, P, Y, S, you get SPIES. And I don't think an institute trying to build bridges between East and West ought to have a summer program called SPIES. Consequently, we took the simple way out and we took the last 2 words and moved them to the front and gave you this unpronounceable name, YSSP. Try pronouncing it, ISP. It doesn't work. So that's how we got to the Young Scientist Summer Program. The program started in 1977 with 17 students. They lined this corridor, the Kaisergang, in green carrels, study carrels, which were blocked off in desks. And we thought, 17, how could you fit any more? Well, after I left, some sort of explosion occurred, and we now have 50 of you each year. and I think we could use even more. I always thought, as I was conceiving this or thinking about it, what would the ideal outcome be? And I formed this image of an international negotiation around a round table on some major topic, climate change, for example, at which the table would be manned and womaned by diplomats and politicians, but sitting behind them would be the technical specialists, their advisors. And my hope was that one of those big conferences, or all of them eventually, those technical advisors would have been alumni of the YSSP program. Why? Because when you leave here, you will have a framework of thought, a system and analytic framework. You'll have, if you're in the energy program, a concept, an understanding of energy deeper than you might have gotten in your own graduate program. And when you run into fellows, even if they weren't in your same year, they will speak very much the same language, and therefore there might be much better communication around the second row than around the first row in the negotiation, and that might help smooth the flow to a rational solution. Very idealistic in these days, I understand, but that was the goal. I don't expect that that exactly has happened, but among the ones you hear, and we now have a class book, which is the beginning of a collection of the biographies of the people who have been through the YSSP program. We hope to collect all 2,000. It shows the diversity of opportunities that you've pursued, the diversity of experiences, the diversity of contributions you made, and all in all, it's an extremely impressive showing. So, I think we can say that we've given you something to carry you forward in your careers. But I don't want to stop without saying how much you've given IIASA, you and all the classes before you. I can be sure, even though I haven't always been here, that the arrival of 50 bright, enthusiastic, energetic, young scientists brimming with ideas, anxious to get started, anxious to meet people, all of that brings an energy to the Institute that wakes it up from the dreary winters here in Austria. So I think you bring a great deal to the Institute, a freshness of thought, and we thank you and appreciate it. Now, what this 40th anniversary has brought to mind is we have a resource here, and you have a resource here. Joanne referred to the family. We want to keep this family close. And so I'm hoping that this event will be an event that leads you to a deeper and longer engagement with IIASA. We want the YSSP to serve as ambassadors for IIASA, as inputs for IIASA, as potential employees and officers of IIASA. We don't want you to just say, I've spent 3 months at IIASA and then go off and leave us. No, we want you to write. You know, just like your mother says, keep in touch. And we want to keep in touch with you. Finally, I think Joanne has thanked people, but I want to call special attention to Joanne and Tibor Vass, who's here. Tibor will speak to you at the end, but he was the first dean and carried the starting classes through the process, developed the program, and gave us a head start on 40 successful years. Joanne took the baton and has continued that progress. There are many other people here who have contributed continually, and I hope you'll have a chance to thank them and to participate and to sign up to continue. So I wish you a good conference. Unfortunately, I've been delegated, seconded to serve on the IIASA Council for this day, and I will be in and out, but I'm here in spirit, I guarantee you, And so goodwill, good wishes, and success in today's events.
Thank you so much, Roger, and I'm sorry you can't be with us, because I can tell you that this whole idea of the 40th anniversary really initiated with Roger, and it was so important to him. And they found something else for him to do while he's here, so we're going to lose him, but we hope you get back a little bit to us. Good, good. So let me just hand the microphone right over to Maki.
Good morning, everybody. It's an enormous pleasure to share the stage with Roger, who had to go back to our council meeting. And it's really a privilege and a pleasure to have the opportunity to say a few words. I would say this is a really momentous event. 40 years is a career in a person's life, but also for institutions. It is something very, very special. I mean, Roger mentioned it already, 2,000 participants in the YSSP program over the last 4 decades. And I think arguably it is the most important thing IIASA is doing. It is about the future, it's about the young scientists, it's about the people who will be shaping our world over the coming decades. So I think this is really important, and I think a very, very special event in the history of IIASA in many ways. But let me go back and, like Joanne, thank the people who made this event possible. Usually we thank the people at the end. I think it's good as you did to thank at the beginning. So of course I would like to mention Maggie again and Tanya, who worked very tirelessly of organizing everybody to come here, and Monica Bauer as well. But let me also thank the scientific coordinators of the program. This is really essential, and of course our chair, Joanne, who is the dean. So I think we owe lots of thanks for all of those who brought us here together. And I hope that many of the YSSPers of this year are also here. We have a very strong program this year, 59 participants. And for those of you who might not know, let me also mention that in the winter of the north or summer of the south, we also have the joint IIASA South African YSSP program. This year there were almost 40 participants there. So together, every generation now is about 100 people. So it is a really incredible human capacity that's put here into the future work. Now, before I say a few personal comments, let me just first greet you on behalf of IIASA's Director General, Pavel Kabat, who unfortunately cannot be here with us, but he wishes you a very successful seminar, and he will definitely join for the social event this evening, and I think also some members of the council will come, and I hope that he will have opportunity to say a few welcoming words. Now, so I mentioned the council meeting, and this is where Roger had to go back. By the way, Roger now represents US on our governing board and the council. We have 24 member organizations of IIASA today, and that from each member organization, one person represents that country on the IIASA Council. It is our governing body, for those of you who do not know that. They make all of the important decisions, from budget to review processes, but also approve our research strategy. So it is a very important event for us. It took place yesterday and today, and to be honest, I expect some really historic decisions. IIASA is also in some ways at the turning point. Just to give you an example, over the last few months, an independent committee conducted institutional review of IIASA, and I'm really happy to note here that they have also identified the YSSP program as the main pillar of IIASA's activities and the human capacity at IIASA. But if that's not enough, council meeting, 40th anniversary, we have yet another meeting in parallel these last 2 days, yesterday and today, and this is our Scientific Advisory Committee. And with the Scientific Advisory Committee, that's also external to IIASA and nominated by our membership, they co-design with us our future strategies, and today and yesterday they've been talking about many cross-cutting integrative activities that IIASA has initiated and are helping us make them ever stronger. Now, what I would like to go back is, since Roger left, maybe I have an opportunity to say a few words about him, and he will not be embarrassed as he is not here. But let me just say that his vision of starting the YSSP program 40 years ago, I think was probably the major innovation in the IIASA history. And let me try to put it, at least from my perspective, in the context. So IIASA came here to this castle physically in 1973. And within the first 3 years, with 0 staff members, within the first 3 years, the staff grew to about 130 people. Now we have about 350 researchers at IIASA. But if you try to project in the back, 130 people within 3 years, that's that's like a Big Bang explosion. And Roger had, I think, a huge challenge of trying to consolidate IIASA, make it resilient and adaptive for the changes that would come into the future. And I think to a large extent that really succeeded. And I think the fact that we are here is a proof of that success. So if I may, I will read a quote from Roger. Actually, that quote is also in the institutional review of IIASA, and I think it's quite important. So let me just read it quickly for you. He said, "There is no other non-political institution sponsored by scientific bodies from multiple, sometimes contending countries that brings together full-time researchers, and I would say also today many part-time researchers, from many nations in multiple disciplines to explore and assess the global future with analytic, data, and process tools." I really think that applies not only to IIASA today, but also applies to the YSSP program. I think this is why you are here. And I think this also explains, I think in many ways, why the YSSP program is such an important part of the IIASA family and our research activities. Now, going back again for a minute, when Roger was the director, the main activities at IIASA were energy, water, food, land use, ecosystems, and systems and decision sciences. Now, if you look at the IIASA research agenda today, it looks very similar, and it's a testimony of the resilience of that research program. And by the way, these are also the major challenges we have today. On the other hand, I think we also have to say that 40 years have brought many changes in the world. We have huge challenges today. I would argue that IIASA has to face and has to reinvent itself to face those challenges. Just think about the post-factual society of alternative facts, populism, just to mention a few things. But what I find particularly concerning is the prospect of lower research funding in the world, exactly at the time when we need science for the major challenges. And my personal view is that the sustainable development and the ways how to find pathways toward stability and good living for people in one planet is our major challenge. And I hope that IIASA will continue having those topics in its agenda. Now, let me go back again for a few minutes to 40 years ago. It's very sentimental when I think about those days. Roger mentioned the first 17 YSSPers in the first year who were sitting in the Kaisergang. That's the corridor that connects this conference center with IIASA. Let me say I sat at the beginning of the Kaisergang, right there. And, I had an incredible privilege of being hired as a very young research assistant here at IIASA. And Roger, of course, was in the stratosphere of academia for me. But I did have lots of interactions with the first-year YSSPers, and that stayed today because I'm roughly the same age as they are. I have many contacts with still all of them. I think for me it was also in many ways what Roger also mentioned, life-changing experience. And I believe that is true for many of people who have participated in the 2000 in the YSSP program. Let me just mention again the institutional review that has been conducted for IIASA. In the course, the committee interviewed 700 people in the IIASA family and many YSSPers. And I think this conclusion that the YSSP program has been a life-changing experience, forging many friendships, both personal and academic, was shared by many who answered the questionnaire. So I think this is really important, but it also works the other way around, and let me say that as well. For IIASA, the YSSP program is incredibly important. Many of the colleagues return to IIASA to be research scholars here, even to be the the leaders of the academic research at IIASA. So this family notion of the research, I think, is very important. Now, of course, I cannot mention everybody in the YSSP program for 2,000 people, and I worked with many over the years, but maybe I will just mention two of the colleagues with whom I worked very closely. One of them is David Victor, whom many of you might know. What was special about David when he was a YSSPer, in the 3 short months, he wrote 3 papers. And all 3 papers ended up being published in peer-reviewed journals. You can imagine how impressed we were. And later on, David returned as a scholar to IIASA and also led our international negotiations program. And he's now, I would argue, one of the most prominent researchers in that area, not just on climate, but also on the other environmental negotiations. Another person I would like to also mention is Peter Aven. Both of them are very unique and in some ways very interesting. Peter Aven was also here as a YSSPer. Then he returned as a research scholar to IIASA. And then, only a few years later, was appointed the Minister of Foreign Economic Relations of the Russian Federation and the Gaidar government. And also he was a founding organizer of the Alpha Bank, and today he heads the Alpha Bank, and Alpha Bank is the largest commercial bank in Russia as far as I know. And he's sponsoring every year one YSSPer at IIASA. So I think also things are returned back to IIASA. Let me also mention 2 other colleagues that I see. Adil is here. Maybe you raise your hands in case somebody doesn't know you. Adil was also here in the YSSP program, and believe it or not, he also served on the IIASA Council that I mentioned before. So from starting as a YSSP all the way to governing body of IIASA on behalf of the Pakistan. And I think Pekka Kauppi is on the program. I didn't see him this morning. Let me say that Pekka also has that in common with Adil. He has been also on the council after being YSSP on the council as the representative of Finland. So it is really, I think, incredible how strong the forging of these unities between IIASA and the YSSP program. Before I conclude, like Roger, I have to say a few words about Tibor Vass, whom you've all seen here at the beginning. Tibor was the dean, as Roger said, of the YSSP program. But Tibor, I think, is the only person I know that occupied all of the important positions in the IIASA over the years. From the beginning, he was also a council member, I think for 8 or 10 years. He served also on many of the council committees, was a research scholar at IIASA. You led also the technology area for many IIASA. I have incredible number of fond memories. I can't tell them, but I just wanted to please talk to Tibor. He's a real, I would say, encyclopedia about IIASA facts. And let me mention at the end one thing that is very significant. Tibor is the only person I know who was actually at the signing ceremony of the IIASA Charter back in 1972 in the Royal Society, representing Czechoslovakia. So maybe you want to ask him about that momentous event 46 years ago, I believe. So let me come to the conclusion. I would like to wish you a very successful seminar today, and I will definitely come and join you for the festivities in the afternoon. I will unfortunately also have to go back to the council meeting, but let me say that I'm quite jealous. Looking at the program, it looks very interesting. I wish you a very interesting day, productive day, and let me just say, maybe when some of you current YSSPers return to here in 40 years. Maybe we'll have opportunity, those of you who are still around, to celebrate the 80th anniversary and 40th anniversary of ever stronger YSSP network. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Naki, for a very, very inspiring, but also very personalized account. I think this is a good way to start things off, both with Roger and Naki, who really could combine the history with also the, where IIASA is right now today. And what, and I owe this to Maggie. I mean, Maggie has tried very hard also in working with Roger and working with Brian and some others to put together panels that have that same spirit. Those topics, as Naki was saying, topics of climate, of water, of land, that really were right from the beginning. And some of the earliest work on climate change was done right here at IIASA. So the panels represent this history, what started back then, what has gone through, what is still relevant today. So with that, I think it would be really important to get started. Is Gregor here? Yeah. Gregor, why don't I invite you up? And Gregor will be moderating the first panel, which is From Kyoto to Paris, Evolution of Climate Governance and Research.